Welcome, listeners of Illusion to Temporal Discussion, the episode-by-episode Knightmare retrospective podcast. I'm Martin Harder, and wise men say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza.
And I am Martin Softer, the sweet you can suck between meals. No, actually, I'm Martin Odoni, and you probably shouldn't try.
And joining us once again today is the creator of the audio project Knightmare, the Lost series, and editor of the Ice Shield's online iteration, Jake Collins.
Here with another joke from the early 90s that you almost certainly won't laugh at. Two goldfish are in a tank. One says to the other, "How do you drive this bloody thing?" Oh, a little titter there.
Yeah, a very little one. I mean, I want to stress to the listeners, now, we may not laugh at that joke today, but back in the 1990s, we wouldn't have laughed at it either.
Do you know, I actually got, because we're recording this literally on New Year's Eve, and I actually got a Christmas cracker joke that I actually thought was reasonably funny.
Well,
it wasn't hilarious, but it was reasonably funny. It is, what do you call a bunch of chess enthusiasts talking about their games in a hotel lobby? And the answer was chestnuts boasting in an open foyer.
I like the goldfish
I think I preferred the goldfish one, yeah.
And today we're looking at Series 4, Episode 13, which was originally broadcast on CITV on Friday, November the 30th, 1990. The number one song at the time was Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice, Kay Kennedy, DJ Earthquake, and not initially credited, Queen and David Bowie. The renowned opening guitar riff of Vanilla Ice's song was originally created by Queen and David Bowie, as most of you are surely aware, and it didn't take long for the original artists to notice and respond. When it came time to face the music, Vanilla Ice said he added a beat between the notes to give the song a new melody, which is like the feeble excuse. It's like, you can copy my homework, but just add a little bit so it doesn't look like you're copying it.
Yeah. I was going to say something along those lines, but it would be just about the worst excuse anyone's brought into court. Hilarious. It's actually quite funny looking back on it now. The jury must have been so offended that he thought that they could get that one past.
Queen and David Bowie opted to bring in a copyright infringement action for exploiting their work without authorization or license because it was both an ethical and a copyright problem. And rightly so. Eventually, both parties did reach a private settlement, and instead of going to court, Vanilla Ice purchased the rights to Under Pressure and finally gave Bowie and Queen credit on Ice Ice Baby.
I'm actually rather shocked to realise this was as early as 1990. I thought it was about 93 that that happened. As I say, as for his cover story, who did he think he was going to... If you pause between Send Him and Victorious, but otherwise do a rendition of God Save the King, does that suddenly make God Save the King your own work?
So there was an upside and a downside for Bowie and Queen on this. The upside being that the song was officially licensed and they got proper credit on Ice Ice Baby. The downside being that they got proper credit on Ice Ice Baby.
That's one of the things, well, we'll just take the money, thanks. We'll leave the rest of the reward, thank you.
According to saltypopcorn.co.uk, and this is somewhat related to Vanilla Ice, Ghost was finally knocked off the number one spot and fell all the way to number 3. Number 2 was the quite frankly awful Leslie Nielsen Exorcist spoof Repossessed, which I rewatched recently, totally independent of this, because for some reason I'm a bit masochistic. I don't know. But anyway, that was at number 2. But at number 1, we got a genuine pop culture powerhouse. It's still going strong to this day. It debuted the week before at number 2, but sneaking out of the shadows and shouting cowabunga as it hit the ground at the top of the box office this week. It's the original live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I freaking love this movie. I know it has major flaws, but it's brilliant.
I've seen this movie once. I can't remember a thing about it. But if you want to hear what Rosie and I think of the cartoon series and the action figure line, listen to our podcast on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm sure the appropriate link will be in the description.
I will say I genuinely and somewhat surprisingly did really like somewhat Partner in Crime's Turtle Power rap.
shell. They're the heroes for. In this day and age, who could ask?
I'm not completely sure why, because I don't normally like rap. That's the nicest thing I'm going to say.
I disagree. I completely disagree 100% with that.
Well, I don't feel strongly enough about it to answer that, so we'll let you win that one.
Okay.
But go ahead, explain why.
Well, I just think that you look at the puppetry especially on the faces for the turtles. Don't look too closely because you'll see the human mouths inside. But
Thank you. Own goal.
For what they
win the game.
For what they were doing at that time was amazing.
By the standards of the time, again, we have to judge by the standards of the time, and yes, by the standards of the time, that is actually pretty good model work. In fact,
yeah,
I'd say by the standards of the time, it's probably very good model work.
I mean, you look at the sequels when they tried to do it cheaper; it's crap. But the original movie is brilliant. The puppetry.
Yeah.
What always interests me is that the voice and I believe it's the voice and the puppeteer for Splinter is probably best known as Elmo from Sesame Street.
I guess you can certainly argue that he's one of those voice actors that they had by the truckload in the 80s and the early 90s. It just got incredible range. That's one thing I will always say, that the British acting outdoes American acting almost every day of the week. But one area where they get it better than everybody is voice acting on cartoons and the like. So they do fantastic voice acting over in America. Yeah, you can certainly say that. The guy playing him has range.
The film was followed by 2 sequels, neither of which were anywhere near as good in my opinion. The third one in particular is absolutely dire. The second one has its plus points. You can tell that there were a lot of complaints about the original film because it's much darker than the TV series and it's closer to the comic books, really. And a lot of parents complained they took their kids to see this movie and everyone was saying, damn.
What? They took their kids to see a film with ninja in the title and they were shocked to see violence in it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Exactly.
Why are so many parents dumb? Why does they have the dumb? What did they expect?
But it's actually the second film that links back to Vanilla Ice. That totally ridiculous scene when the turtles kind of burst into a nightclub and Ice is there. He's doing his thing and he sees these turtles burst in and then just starts feeling it, and it's like, yo, it's the Green Machine going around the house without being seen. Jake's just looking at me, so worried for my sanity right now.
Yeah, well, you get used to it, Jake.
I'm glad I don't remember it.
Yeah, after over 50 episodes of this, I just let it pass now. But I dimly remember that scene. I always thought that was a parody of that notorious scene in the Batman TV series in the 1960s when Batman goes into a club and says something about I don't want to look conspicuous or something, but before getting caught up in a dance scene, as you're miming at the moment, for the benefit of the viewers, for the listeners, I should say. I thought they were just taking the piss out of that. So, no, I don't really like any of them. I gave them all a try, but basically my brother's insistence.
He's the right age for them. You're not.
Yes. To be fair, Russell hates them these days. He can't understand himself why he liked them so much.
Temporal discussion. Bringing you the latest news from 1990.
The news. Oh boy. Right. Okay. So on this date in 1990, the US President George Bush Sr. declared his willingness to go the extra mile for peace, offering to send Secretary of State James Baker III to Baghdad to speak with President Saddam Hussein and inviting Iraqi Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz to Washington during the week of December the 10th. Remember that it was mid-February when the war broke out, so this was actually cutting it awfully close. Bush made it apparent. Well, actually, it was January that the war broke out, wasn't it? So, in fact, it was cutting even closer. Bush made it apparent that while he was eager to talk, he was unwilling to compromise, which does rather add a strange definition to the term "go the extra mile." I am not suggesting discussions that will result in anything less than Iraq's complete withdrawal from Kuwait, the restoration of Kuwait's legitimate government, and freedom for all hostages, he declared during a White House press conference. Bush went on to say that even a complete Iraqi departure might not be enough to remove the US-backed economic boycott against Saddam's administration. This eventually led to the 1991 Geneva Peace Conference. Fat lot of good that did.
Exactly.
Held on January the 9th in Geneva, obviously. Baker represented the USA, and Iraq was represented by Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz. For over 7 hours, neither side budged an inch from their starting positions, while the US and its allies persisted in demanding that Iraq leave Kuwait immediately. Iraq refused to do so, and the meeting served as the last spark that ignited the Gulf War, as if it was ever going to be avoided anyway. The whole of this exercise for me was just classic posturing in front of the cameras so that both sides could claim, look at them, they won't give any ground. It's not our fault that the war's going to happen. That was all it was. It was just both sides were just doing it just in the hope of making themselves look like the good guys. Invasion was overkill on Iraq's part, but I do still think they had a point back in 1990. The reason they invaded Kuwait was that Kuwait was stealing its oil reserves near the border by illegal slant drilling under the ground into Iraqi territory. That is internationally illegal. It's not really quite the sort of good guy, bad guy war that was being painted to us at the time. I'm not defending Saddam Hussein. He was a monster, but in terms of his reasons for invading Kuwait, he did actually have a case. What do you think, Jake?
The Gulf War absolutely terrified me, and I didn't then, and I still don't really know a lot about the reasons behind it. But I've been raised on stories of the First World War and the Second World War from my granny, who lived through both, and I was imagining similar things starting off again. I didn't realise it was all happening so far away. However, that's not to say it's still not an atrocious thing. And the thing that bothers me most is it's still happening today. Let's stop it, please.
Yeah,
it's all related.
How much you could say the conflicts going on in Iraq at the moment are actually a direct result of 1991. Well, probably not. It's more to do with 2003, that. Although 2003 is a consequence. There's so much overlap between different wars all across the Middle East.
I also think about Ukraine and Russia and think, please stop.
Anyway, Knightmare.
And now time turns. The recording light burns. Timeout is gone. The podcast is on.
Greetings. I think you're just in time for the final conflict. Pickle, we stand poised on the brink of expectation. Relieve us, if you please.
Of course, Master. The quest delves deep and promises much. Team in quest, Dominic, Timothy, Praveen. Guiding Dickon, who carries merely a phial of poison. Deep in level 3, he walks in search of the crown. Duration of quest, 45 minutes. I don't think I can cope.
I'm not sure I can either, but you can, can't you? Watch now, for timeout is gone. The game is on.
So this is very exciting, isn't it? Everything's all echoey. Pickle's all tense, and even Traegard seems to think that this team are going to go all the way.
Double entendre of the week already, and it goes to Mr. H himself.
Greetings, Dickon. You kept the bargain, and you were most convincing. I offer you my congratulations.
Thank you.
The team, Dominic, Tim, Praveen, and their dungeoneer, Dickon, had just discovered a phial of poison on the table and picked it up before temporal disruption. Now, as we begin this episode, Hordris appears unbidden. With the whole Brother May still, they would have had no idea where to call Hordris. So he just appears at this point in the quest because that's where it happens. Dickon had kept his side of their bargain, temporarily turning Brother Mace into a lizard, using a potion that he claimed was Etruscan brandy, and now Hordris declares that he intends to keep his side of the bargain. As a haunting appears in the top left corner, Hordris gives Dickon 2 spells. He explains that one, fire, is most powerful, whilst the other, opposite, is quite humble, and unlike Helen's team, they can really rely on that information.
Now, before I plunge us into darkness, perhaps you'd care to leave.
Say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Turn to the right and hold up the eye shield, Dickon.
As Dickon leaves, the passive path takes over.
Most amicable and profitable business relationship there. Powerful, humble thing does sound a little bit like Quest 1, doesn't it? But never mind. So it says something about Hordris that he says you may be reassured to learn. It's quite clear that he doesn't give a toss whether Brother Mace is unharmed by the Etruscan brandy.
Okay, Dickon, stop. You're in a room and there's a massive, sort of thing in front of you. And there's a window to the right.
Dickon has arrived in what appears to be the same circular chamber as the previous one, only with the photograph taken from a different angle. This is Orford Castle in Suffolk, I wonder if you know. The familiar archway leads, as usual, to a window on the left, whilst a larger archway that appears to lead to an unknown passage, unless we've seen Alistair's quest, is on the right. Directly in front of the dungeoneer is the entrance to the Corridor of Blades. Before anything can be done, though...
What did you say was in front of Dickon?
Someone's just appeared.
Welcome, dungeoneer. Welcome to my kingdom. For Malice is now the undisputed queen of the lower levels.
The large and intimidating form of Malice towers over Dickon. In a sing-song voice, she informs Dickon that only her subjects can progress beyond this point. She asks Dickon if he agrees to become one of her subjects.
Just to say to the audience, this is some of the best consistent room after room material you get in the entire series. The next few rooms are really engrossing, and great contrast to so much else around it. This is really excellent stuff over the next few chambers.
Yeah.
Totally agreed. This is some of my favourite parts of Series 4 as well. And as I've explained before, I have a lot of fondness for Series 4.
It's also, we also have to stress, a great contributor to it immediately is the team, because they handled Malice here very skillfully, as Mr. H is about to tell us about.
They can't master the quest. It doesn't work like that. Quiet, Pickle. If she's grown this powerful, she can hear you. Besides, the quest is about making choices, one's own choices.
What shall I say, team?
For the moment, say yes, I think. Yeah, say maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, so like you say, this is absolute genius. Most teams would have said no here, but humouring Malice was definitely the right choice.
Yeah, sound like you're saying yes, and yet don't quite say it. It's basically they're being politicians, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful double speak. Like you say, I wish more Dungeoneers and teams would have the imagination to use grey areas in their speech when they're dealing with some of the non-player characters. I imagine some of the actors would have enjoyed that too. I think a lot of the really good improvisers in the cast would have loved playing that game with them. I think it means the plot that's developing has to roll on with some force into their next meeting in a couple of chambers' time.
I wonder if Malice had a reply ready, but if they did say no, which most teams would have, saying something like, right, you're about to get chopped in half then.
Yeah, very possibly. But she probably also had an answer in case she got an unambiguous yes, which probably gives them a spell that would destroy them or something, just like the power spell from season 2. But she gets a sort of answer, so she just cautiously wanders off, looking slightly, not threatening, but slightly suspicious. That's good.
It is the ways that she kind of disappears without saying anything. It kind of says, oh shit, I hadn't got anything planned for this one. I didn't think they would say no. Oh, okay.
It might do, but you check the expression on her face. Samantha Perkins is definitely deliberately portraying suspicion there. I'll leave you alone for the moment, but I'm keeping my eyes on you.
Satisfied for now, though clearly reserving judgment, Malice vanishes. The team then leads Dickon onwards as a haunting appears to hurry them along.
This scene is also intriguing for its subtext, because there is clearly, we've mentioned this in earlier episodes, clearly some kind of conflict going on within the opposition, such as it is at this point, and Malice appears to have overthrown Mogdred. We can seem to be able to take that from what she says here, but she's...
Malice is now the undisputed queen of the lower level.
Exactly. That can only mean that she's overthrown Mogdred. Although she's, just like Dickon, she's careful about what details she will give you. I'm in charge now, but I'm not going to tell you how or why. So you could almost see there's a kind of diplomatic chess match going on between here. They're sort of circling each other, but without ever actually daring to take an opponent's piece or anything.
Which, of course, we cover in 5 Tribes Go to War.
Well, if you accept that as the real stuff, got to make that clear. That's just my theory about what was happening behind the scenes here, and it's because I find it so engrossing, wondering what's over there. It's about the only thing about season 4 I do find engrossing.
Yeah,
but it's not official. You don't. As Jake's pointed out, there was actually a massive continuity blunder I put in involving Goody. You can very well argue that it can't be legitimate. But there's all sorts of other possibilities, and they can probably be even more interesting.
But I think in the absence of any official continuity, any official explanation, it's probably the best that we've got.
Yeah, it's the only one at the moment. But I do encourage people to come up with other stories about the background behind season 4.
How many times did you have to rewatch season 4 to write that?
I can't remember. In fairness, the good thing was this quest was very important to the sort of the hinge point of the play. So I could focus quite a bit of the research on that. So that certainly eased the pain, because this is actually really good stuff in this quest. But there was a lot of, oh God, fast forward. You've got to remember back then, as far as I remember, Knightmare wasn't up on YouTube. So I had to use my tapes. So I had my VHS tapes in an old clunky machine, and the tape wearing out and getting pulled this way and that as I hurriedly hit fast forward to get through the boring bits. So I was actually getting a bit worried about it. But it was quite a lot, is the answer.
Stop. Right, we can see you travelling along on the conveyor belt with the walls just going past.
Dickon, be very careful. Move to the left wall. Move
to the left wall. Stop.
Be very careful, Dickon.
Oh no! It's the corridor of waves, and you're standing on a conveyor. You're this waste of fate by your circular blades. The ultimate dungeon is there.
Be careful. Move to
Okay,
the right.
to the right. Quick.
Now, team, guide him well.
The team moves Dickon back to the left just in time to dodge another blade, and then back over to the right again. Dickon seems to have gotten the gist of what's happening, moving very nimbly each time he is ordered to switch sides. Certainly can't fault Dickon as a dungeoneer, no matter what else there is to say about Knightmare. He's worked out that 2 skips is all it takes to reach the opposite wall. Alistair, of course, was incapable of skipping, and thus we saw what happened to him here. Yeah, this, combined with some decent directions from the team, makes the corridor of blades look almost too easy. Once he reaches the door, Dickon walks through it.
Oh, yes. It's excellent.
Yeah, excellent manoeuvring and good footwork all round. I do think the first couple of blades were moving a little slowly, though, sort of giving them a chance to get warmed up, as it were. But overall, flawless work by Dungeoneer and advisors to make one of the most dangerous puzzles in the entire history of the series, as you say, look almost a breeze.
There's extra tension with that scene the first time round, because what have we seen in this puzzle, this trap before? Someone get cut in half.
Yes.
We've seen Simon with the truncated version in level 2, with Gandrada doing all the work, which is not the same situation at all. This is the first time we've seen a team do it really well, pass it successfully, and it's really exciting deep in level 3 Knightmare. It's absolutely brilliant.
And it's perfectly placed in the context of the Dickon Malice seesaw that's just started up as well. It's the perfect time to add it in. So you've got the threat of the dungeon and the threat of Malice. You know, whatever happens, you're in danger because you've got traps like this all over the place. And then you've got to deal with Malice, who, if she turns on you, the danger is suddenly doubled. So it's a really good time to slot that in there and remind everyone that there's no easy way out of this. You're in danger whatever you do. So this is really good stuff. At long last, this is really good stuff.
I'm going to commit myself and say this is my favourite passage of Knightmare altogether, ever. The Dickon part of this episode. You can see why I've been wanting to talk about it, and I've been planning to say some things on it for well over a year.
I mean, even for me, I unlike you, Jake, I largely detest season 4, but even for me, it's definitely in the conversation for some of the best Knightmare sequences ever. It helps that this level 2 was actually a pretty good level 2. So it means overall this has to go down as one of the classic quests. So if you're going to ask me what is your favorite couple of episodes of Knightmare in a row, this would be in the discussion, definitely.
And is anyone thinking at this stage, certainly first watching it, oh, Dickon got a free ticket through Ariadne. I'm not sure this is quite the ticket. Of course they're not, because we're in level 3, that's the fact, and it's tremendously exciting. And that's what really makes Knightmare work. So really, it's worth Ariadne thinking Gundrada makes better dinner than Dickon does.
Where am I?
Oh, you're on a bridge, so don't go either way. It looks to be pretty...
Extreme caution, team. She returns.
Malice.
Welcome, Dickon. I'm not so sure I trust you. So pledge yourself and your endeavors permanently to me alone. Do you so pledge?
Dickon has reached the narrow bridge with the waterfall in the background.
This scene is perhaps a bit too similar to others in the season with Mogdred, but it's still impossible not to be engrossed precisely because Malice is there instead, and you're eager to see what kind of threat she can pose in contrast to Mogdred's. But I really enjoy Samantha's performance here too. When she appears, she hits a fine balance between approachable, because she might be an ally, and sinister. You're never completely sure with Malice what's going to happen. Is she going to be friendly? Is she going to be an opponent? It's actually more ambiguous than Hordris. I do think it's a shame Malice wasn't kept on board after this season, because she was the best thing about season 4 for me. And you feel her ambiguous character had a lot of potential that was just left untapped.
Especially she's only in 4 episodes.
As Malice, yeah.
Also, though, as we'll see in the scene coming up, I believe, it's actually got frightening again. Malice is genuinely frightening in this bit coming up.
But yeah.
Yeah. Just by the by, this is where you can see some more of David Rowe's work in Series 4.
Yes.
All this subterranean caves background.
Yeah, we love it. We love it. We've almost done it to death. How much we love it. This is sort of an upgraded version of what we were getting all the time in the first 3 seasons. And such a shame that the photographs were used so much in the first 2 levels instead. Because, but this is it's wonderful. The water cavern.
All this fantastically atmospheric level 3. It's absolutely brilliant. It's well up to the level 3 of the first 3 series, I think, in terms of atmosphere, settings, locations. And really, I don't think you will get anywhere close to it again in the whole show. And you don't get Series 3 with its own feel, own location, I would argue, until Series 7. And we're in a very different situation with how that's created. After some discussion, the team sense that they're not going to be able to pull the wool over Malice's eyes a second time. Oh, I love the way she says here, pledge yourself and your endeavours permanently to me alone. They know they're not going to get away with saying yes to that.
They can't double speak their way around it either. It's presented as a real dilemma. And actually, although it's been done loads of times in seasons 2 and 3, it actually feels like a dilemma far more than it did, for instance, when asking Julian to, or who was it in season 3?
Leo,
that's it, yeah. But you knew they were going to say no simply because they've seen what happened to Stuart in season 2. Well, we're not going to do that. Here, because Dickon sort of fudged his answer in the previous chamber, you actually wonder, is he going to do it?
No. Spurn me then. I see you have survived blades. Let's see if you can survive a fatal fall.
Dickon refuses to pledge allegiance to the sorceress, eventually. A bolt of lightning shoots from Malice's forehead, probably meant to be the eye, I would think, perhaps badly placed, causing the bridge to begin collapsing. The only option Dickon has now is to move quickly, which he's good at, unlike Helen. Rather than running full pelt whilst wearing a blindfold, Dickon opts to do that power walking thing that the American mums and Harold Bishop from Neighbours used to do in the 80s to keep fit. But it works, and Dickon makes it across. Yeah, unlike Helen's team here, we've got quick, confident instructions from the advisors, and Dickon moving quickly, confidently, carefully enough in response. the team working really, really well as a team here.
It's very important to emphasize one of the reasons this stuff is so good is because the team are that good. Okay, next to Circular Room. Before we start, I just want to concede and put on record, again, for all my general disdain to season 4, this next scene could be my favorite single scene in all of Knightmare. It is a fantastic, really tense final showdown between the goodie and the baddie here. Perkins, again, is at her absolute very best. Her little speech before the action begins is just brilliant, delivered it at least as well as any John Woodnuts did as Mogdred. And we have a really spectacular resolution.
It's brilliant.
I completely agree. And the thing is that it doesn't start off very well, does it? Because you immediately go into the room and you find it's the same circular chamber again. And you just think, oh no. But you don't notice because what's happening is so engrossing.
Yeah, basically, because when Malice appears, she just immediately dominates the scene. The circular chamber is pretty much blotted out anyway.
This is the bit where she becomes proper frightening again.
This scene is the prototype for all those one-on-ones between Dungeoneers and Lord Fear at the ends of quests or at the ends of seasons, in seasons 6 to 8. But it actually does it better. This is where the prototype actually outdoes the so-called perfected form. And then, having done all this, they still have to solve a food shortage problem before they can even leave the chamber. There is loads happening here, guys. Oh, if only season 4 had been this ambitious and so many other quests.
Stop, Dickon. You're in a small circular room and there's a door, I think.
The first attempt to really follow this up with a final climactic end of quest scene, of course, in the next series is with Ben and Isandra, and that comes absolutely nowhere near matching this scene. The huge, looming, threatening Malice head glaring down at him. Absolutely brilliant stuff. It's well up to any of those Lord Fear confrontation scenes.
I think the problem in the season 5 of Isandra is all you'd really seen of her before she confronts Ben is just a couple of eyeglass sequences. She hadn't actually tried to attack him before that, so that aura of threat about her hasn't built yet. We've had 2 scenes with Malice building up her presence into this beforehand, and then in the final scene you suddenly see her gigantic looming over him, and so with the threat already building up about her, there's suddenly this enormous aura about her. You have to be scared. You've got no choice. It's almost forcing you to be scared, whereas Isandra she wasn't given enough time to do that.
Originally, I wrote Malice's head Zordon's in the room, and I thought that's not really fair because that makes it seem funny, and it's really frightening.
Yeah, the term to use is looming to a kind of emphasise the point. It's not silly. It's not a cartoon head popping up out of nowhere like a gigantic balloon. This is just her face and the veil surrounding it, and her looking furious and outraged and just towering over her enemy to sort of emphasise that she has power that massively outstrips his, and he's in terrible danger. It's not comedy, this. It's scary. It is really scary. And that is what Knightmare should be.
Enough! I lose patience. Contrary to your belief, this is not a game. You thwart me, and so I destroy you.
Fine. Well, okay, spellcasting. F-I-R-E.
Malice is vanquished, but Dickon's life force is so low that he will not survive more than another few seconds.
It seems almost unfair, doesn't it? They've just survived beating the big bad, and they're still not safe.
Your need for food and energy has become critical. You must eat or drink something now.
Go forward.
Now you must eat or drink something now.
What have we got? You've only got the poison.
Absolutely brilliant tension here. Tim discovers walk forwards is not going to be good enough in this situation. Now you must eat or drink something now, Treygod has to reiterate.
Hugo doesn't get enough credit for the delivery of that line, does he? They've still got to do more immediately.
It's at this point that Praveen has a brainwave, and he suggests that they cast opposites on the poison. Yes.
Okay, we're going to have to do another spell and try and make the poison opposite.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant tension. I had no idea what they were supposed to do, although really, if you're not 7 years old and tremendously excited, it's obvious. What have you got? The poison and the opposite spell.
Yeah, it didn't cross my mind at the time either, and I was double your age then. I thought the opposite spell would be used outwards, so to speak. It would be used against something that they come across. It never occurred to me to use it on something that they've got in their possession. Yes, I suppose in hindsight it is obvious.
So the word poison was initially coined to describe what we would now refer to as controlled substances. And generally speaking, a controlled substance is a drug or chemical whose production, distribution, and usage are governed by government regulations. Examples of such substances would be illegal narcotics and legally defined prescription pharmaceuticals. The modern day use of the word refers to any chemical that poses a threat to or kills living things. The phrase is widely used and often defined in a variety of scientific domains and businesses, and can also be used broadly and in a colloquial or metaphorical way. In biology, a poison is a chemical substance that causes death, damage, or harm to organisms or their components. And in medicine, poisons are a type of toxin that is supplied passively rather than aggressively. In industry, the phrase can be negative, referring to anything that may be eliminated in order for something to be safe, or positive, referring to an agent that limits harmful pests. The word opposite means opposite.
Could you explain that second one again? I lost the thread about halfway through.
So, spellcasting, O-P-P-O-S-I-T-E.
The spell seems to have had an effect, but the life force is still counting down, albeit now very slowly. After a reminder from Pickle... And gone! Pickle's great at adding to that sort of tension with even a quick little thing like "and" the way he says it. Dickon drinks the potion, notes the cartoon gulping sound as he does so, and his life force is restored to green.
What, the poison? Drink it.
Life force restored.
I love Tregard saying there, life force restored, easing the tension for all of us. Wonderful work from Hugo and David there.
You can almost hear air being let out of the balloon there as life force restored. And at last, just to say to the whole world, and relax. The only weak bit of the entire scene is that silly gulping sound effect, which it sounds so fake that it almost breaks the fourth wall. Apart from that, it is terrific stuff.
Would it be better if he bunged it in the knapsack?
I've often wanted that myself, actually. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not literally supposed to eat or drink any of the props. I mean, Julian put that bottle of milk in the knapsack back in season 2. Presumably the poison's been transformed to milk or something thereof, so just put it in the knapsack.
Yeah. There is a precedent for it. Yeah.
The next couple of chambers are really the only problem that I have with the episode. Is that the last few scenes have been so good. That these ones feel like a bit of an anticlimax.
And especially after this particular scene, which is really awesome. I actually wrote a note here to say this. Sadly, what follows doesn't get within 100 feet of it. And so we have an anticlimax ahead. That's the exact way I worded it. It's still not terrible, I should stress. It's not terrible, but it just feels a little bit like we're finishing in first gear, so to speak, after being up in fifth.
Dickon then leaves the chamber via a passive path, and I have to tell you, this is one of my most vivid memories of watching Knightmare the first time round when I was 7, when Dickon was going into uncharted territory there. I thought we had Mogdred and Helen, that quest ended there. This is now uncharted territory, this eye shield sequence. Going through the garderobes, the toilets in Orford Castle. I didn't realise that at the time. It was super exciting. It absolutely thrilled me to think, what is coming next?
Yeah, I think the word is intrepid.
It makes me think of something Hugo Myatt said in his Eye Shield fanzine interview, which is that what really made Knightmare work at the most basic level, its ability to excite viewers was paramount, is what he said, and he's absolutely right. That's why we come back and tune in for this level of excitement. That's why I still love the show so much.
Okay, Dickon, stop. Right, in front, it's another one of these door rooms. There's seems to be a large gap in front of you, but there's still a few footsteps. Can you see something on the floor?
Oh, come on, team, you know the calling by now, so
okay, we're going to have to do the call again, so...
Okay.
You got it?
True and false, false and true. Open up and let us through.
It's impressive that Dickon has remembered the calling well enough that he needs no reminding from the advisors. Yes, I like that. It really hammers home how good Dickon is as a dungeoneer. He's really on the ball. The Weeping Doors, or Door Monsters, as many Knighties refer to them, and so does Pickle actually, were exclusive to Series 4, and as no other team ever made it this far, this is Doreen's first and only appearance.
I want to beat up Mr. H for very deliberately putting that in there to take the mick out of my Devon accent, just because Devon's winning here and he's resenting that. It's Hampshire jealousy. That's what it is.
Yeah, that was totally the reason.
You don't fool me.
That's totally the reason. It wasn't anything to do with these huge sausage fingers that I'm having to work with.
I see you.
According to the Knightmare lexicon, Doreen was never given an individual credit, which indeed is true for any character exclusive to Series 4, but the lexicon does mention it about Doreen specifically. This has led to some indecision over who provided the voice and mouth and teeth, which are part of the mouth, really. Some say that Samantha Perkins played the role, whilst others believe that it was Zoe Lofton.
So I've put in the notes here that I personally believe that it was Zoe, because it didn't really sound like Samantha Perkins to me. But Jake, you've presented evidence, haven't you, that it probably is Sam Perkins?
Well, it's not evidence in the sense that I would like to say the things that I've sent you in email picture files are usually evidence, but this is one of my purple notes, which I shall now move on to, if you're both quite ready.
Yeah. Go ahead.
When I first appeared on this podcast with you for episode 1 of this series, I said that the Eye Shield fanzine was mostly correct. And the specific thing that I was thinking about in it that I now believe to be wrong is that it says that Zoe Lofton was Doreen, which was quite widely accepted around the Knightmare Online community at the time. However, several years ago, Rosey actually convinced me that Doreen is Samantha Perkins. Looking at the mouth, I agree with Rosey. It does appear to be the mouth, the teeth of an older person than Zoe. Dooris's teeth and Mellie's teeth do match up. And she was very young, wasn't she, while doing Knightmare, Zoe? Less than 20. I do think Doreen's mouth doesn't look like her mouth. It does look like a mouth that's been around a bit.
Correction. Double entendres of the week go to Jake.
Doreen's mouth doesn't have such nice, neat, childlike teeth. If you want to kind of bridge from the normal Malice Andrada voices that Samantha does to Doreen, I would say Malice in her sweeping disguise with Simon in episode 8 might provide something. This is not something I can prove, but it is something I now believe.
That's a fair case, though, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that if Zoe was doing a Cockney accent, I don't think she needs to change things too much. Yeah, she's obviously received pronunciation normally, but it does seem heavily forced, the Cockney accent for Doreen. In a way, let's be honest, that somebody with a posher voice would do it. And it's fair to say Samantha's voice is posher than Zoe's. So yeah, I do see a strong case there.
If it is Samantha Perkins, it goes on further to boost my belief that the actual speech impediment was put on for Kondrada's character.
Yeah, exaggerated.
Abandon hope. There are black clouds ahead. I see evil portents. One bad turn leads to another. Tomorrow will be as bad as today.
That these questions, they're not really level 3 questions, are they?
No.
Oh, yeah, I meant to mention that, and I didn't write it in purple. They're thrown together at the last moment, aren't they?
So there is something about the whole scene that does look extremely first draft.
I could answer all these questions without a moment's thought, and I was 7. Pickle's very unimpressed with them, too.
Yeah, we get that at the end, don't we? The rule supposedly, although it's never mentioned in the series, is that you need 1 correct riddle to open past the door in level 1, 2 correct in level 2, and 3 correct to pass Doreen here. Now, I've started to think that's an urban myth. The supposal was mentioned on the KM forums many a year ago, but I'm not aware of any official confirmation. That's where I've looked, I've not found any. Anyone who has old issues of the quest might be able to uncover something for us, because if there was anywhere outside the show it would be mentioned, it would have been there. But I've not seen anything when checking the quest that refers to it. Anyway, let's have the riddles for what they're worth.
The Atlantic is bigger than the Pacific. True or false?
And the answer is, of course, or is it false? Actually, we don't know the real answer to that because the program, when doing this riddle, hasn't taken into account an entire dimension here, depth. The answer is correct if we interpret bigger as meaning wider. The Atlantic covers an area approximately 106.5 million square kilometers. The Pacific is over 155 million square kilometers. But the truth is, we don't know which ocean is bigger because we don't know the precise depths at most positions because of the varying seabed depths. That's both the Pacific and the Atlantic. And the truth is, we may never know for sure, as vast stretches of both oceans are completely unexplored. We know proportionally more about the surface of the moon than we do about the lowest recesses of the oceans. So it's possible that the Atlantic is bigger. We'll probably don't know.
This is one of those riddles that needs a proviso. It's by surface area.
Yeah, it's another one that's badly worded. Yeah.
Agreed.
Another thing we have to take into account as well, not so much, but given that the time and the state of the question, is that both of them are getting bigger.
That's true as well. And the times are also getting smaller because it depends on the tide as well. You've got to remember also the moon is constantly pulling on the seas, so there's a high tide and a low tide. Effectively, they've got different sizes at those points. Sometimes it may even depend on the time of day. It's not only an easy question, it's also a bad question.
Kilimanjaro is taller than Everest. True or false?
Everest is irrefutable. Everest is way taller.
I have to hold up my hands and say, I didn't really learn about Kilimanjaro when I was at school. The only reason I learned about Kilimanjaro is from a Monty Python sketch.
Well, it doesn't matter where you learned it from as long as you know it. Is it the double vision one?
Yeah, they were going to build a bridge between the two peaks. My idea, I'm afraid.
And what do you think, Mr. H2?
Aesop was a slave who told stories about animals. True or false?
Which is true as far as we know. Mr. H, you wrote this, Charlie.
Yes.
Well, in fact, you copy-pasted it from Wikipedia. I've checked. Don't bother denying it.
I put it through Grammarly.
All right, so you stole from Grammarly and from Wikipedia. That doesn't make it better.
Is it Grammarly we have to blame for Gotten?
It's very much an Americanism, isn't it?
Yeah, it
I
is.
said it to British English. I did, I promise.
I'm pretty confident Aesop was a real person because the intellectuals who wrote about him were too serious and well-informed just to reference something that's completely made up.
Yeah.
But there is no actual concrete, solid evidence that survives today.
Yeah, when we say there's no real concrete evidence, like there's no surviving original copies of his work.
His name is Aesop, for they were many.
But details of his alleged life can be discovered in ancient sources such as Aristotle, Herodotus, Plutarch. The Aesop romance, which is an ancient literary work, offers an episodic, largely, we believe, fictitious story of his life, including the depiction of him as a stunningly unattractive slave who gains freedom and becomes an advisor to kings and city-state via his brilliance.
I studied that legend, I think I was about 9. And even at that age, I was thinking, this reads like a story Aesop would have written himself.
Stunningly unattractive features, he turns out to be so he can pick up banana skins that he's dropped on with his nose.
But still, a salute to Aesop, whether he really is one person or if he's a composite of a number of different people. He has to be one or the other.
Truth will out, and so will you.
I thought they were going to be more difficult, Master.
Really?
Pickle being extremely unimpressed. I thought they were going to be more difficult, Master. Really? I don't think Hugo or David were prepared for those riddles. But still, I tell you, when Rosie and I first saw Doreen, when we were 5 and 7, we were absolutely thrilled because we weren't expecting it at all. It completed the trilogy. It was one of those things, like I mentioned in Series 4, that keeps you on your toes. So I have a lot of time for Doreen.
Okay, Dickon, stop. You're in a large room with 2 windows.
Quickly, this chamber is haunted.
Over to your right, there's a statue, and I think it's wearing a crown.
Dickon has entered a new chamber, which I say is a generous description. It's a close-up of the windows in the chamber we've been seeing over and over again from Walford Castle. So kind of a new chamber, kind of a new way to use that very familiar chamber.
And now that you mention it, it obviously is, because that step is obviously much bigger than it should be.
But at least it's nice they did something different with it.
There are two large windows directly in front of him. We've seen those before, I think. And what appears to be an exit to the right. Yes, it's been used as an exit several times. The blue filter is going into overdrive here. There's a statue, which we'll see a bit later, with the evil eye and Jeremy, upon which is a crown, the object of Dickon's quest. The chamber is guarded by an absolutely massive haunting. I guess it's kind of in proportion to the close-up on the window.
Yeah.
That is flying around in a circle overhead, which immediately exits as soon as Dickon begins to move. I always like to think it knew that the big sunburst was coming when Dickon was going to pick up the crown, and it wanted to get out of there PDQ.
You don't have to make excuses for it, mate. The fact the haunting just flies away really adds to the sad feeling of anticlimax the scene leaves us with. At least make the act of claiming the crown slightly difficult. You know, if nothing else, have the haunting hanging around and moving towards Dickon anytime he moves towards the crown, and just make a bit of a maneuvering puzzle out of it. Something, anything.
Yeah, even if it's just going up and down above the crown, and they have to
time it. Yeah.
Time it. Yeah.
Again, even as it is, it added to my excitement at the time when I was 7. So I'm still really, really into all this.
It looks good. As season 4 hauntings go, it looks good.
I was okay about it at the time. It could have been better.
Yeah.
Part of me, when I was that age, I was still scared enough by what I was watching that I was like, oh, please don't let's have puzzle or anything here. Let's just get the crown and get out of here. But looking at it now, you actually realize, no, this is too quick. This is too easy. It's too sudden. So anyway.
Can you see the statue?
Yes.
Has it got a crown on it?
Yes.
Pick up the crown.
Pick up the crown.
He's done it, Master Dickon has the crown!
Yes, he has, hasn't he? Then there's only one thing for it. Merlin!
And Michael will have to shout, I've arrived. Well, what is it now?
Merlin?
Oh, my goodness. I see you have a winner for us. Well, goodness gracious me. Nothing like this has happened since, let me see, 1988. I've almost forgotten what to do next. I have forgotten what to do next. Oh, no, I haven't. Spellcasting! U-N-I-T-E. There. Dickon. I'll take that if you don't mind.
Merlin makes a comment about the last time we saw a winner was 1988, which kind of messes with my mind a little bit. Continuity over the time period that the show is set is all over the place anyway. But I always just assumed that these were kids from the future who'd found their way into the past.
Continuity of any form is all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, that was basically what Traeger was saying throughout the first couple of seasons, but it's becoming more metaphysical. If you want to worry about it, you can just assume that Merlin was just referring to the time period that the castle connects to in the future. So it's 1988, the children, but it's 1198 for Traeger, that sort of thing.
Maybe. I've said, my theory is that the dungeon and Knightmare Castle exist at all times, rather than in a particular time period. It is representative of all times. And that's why we have things like ice packs and pineapples.
I really like the idea of the dungeon being timeless, like you said, Martin H. I enjoyed it when you said that on an early podcast. And I do like it when the characters chuck in knowledge of kind of our time. Merlin here, 1988. Traegard saying things like elves don't have advertising breaks. We have a winner!
We have a winner! We have a winner!
I mean, this was absolutely wonderful at the time. You don't even have to be thinking, oh, we haven't had one for 2 whole series. I mean, I knew there hadn't been any in Series 3, but it's just very exciting anyway, whenever you get a winner. Years later, you can look back, pick it apart and say, well, why did this person win and not Leo or whoever? But At the time, that doesn't matter at all. We have a winner. That's all that matters. The only successful quest in Series 4 has come to an end. Dickon, crown in hand, looks absolutely bewildered to be standing in the antechamber once more. Merlin produces the silver spurs of Squidom, telling them that they're not valuables, merely mementos. But what they have achieved is worth far more than any treasure. I absolutely love that line. Martin H. would wager a bet, though, that they'd fetch a pretty penny on eBay nowadays. Yes, I agree.
Yes, it says something that he was the first one to think about that, wasn't it? I mean, as with the season 2 winners, the team don't exactly look like they're ready to party the month away, do they? And Dickon in particular looks really unimpressed with his prize. He almost seems to be thinking, I went through all that just for this piece of junk? It's probably just as well that Merlin says that their achievement is worth more than any treasure. It must be worth more than this one, judging by Dickon's expression.
Now, Dickon, and who's next? And Dominic, well done. And you, Tim, congratulations. Absolutely splendid. And of course, Praveen, or may I call you Prav?
Prav.
How splendid, thank you, Prav. I know people do. How absolutely splendid. Now, finally, well done, Tickle.
Tickle.
Oh, Pickle. And congratulations, Dungeon Master. Now, I know you have other beads to oversee, but first we must make sure that our young champions are safe. Stand up, boys. The dungeon salutes you. Spellcasting! H-O-M-E. There. Let me know when you have another winner, Dungeon Master. But do make it soon.
Decent quest, great team. I personally found the ending a little anticlimactic after all that brilliant stuff with Malice.
Well, it's a pity because Malice was driving so much of it. It meant that when she was defeated, it was bound to go downhill from there. Maybe have her guarding the quest object as Lord Fear would do in later years.
Yeah.
So that she gets shot in the head and then they take the quest object. Well, she gets shot in the head and leaves. They then do the opposite spell to make the poison edible, and then they take the quest object, maybe. So something like that. You're going from 6th gear down to 2nd gear in rather a big rush, I think, is the problem there. And so we end up with 2 chambers that bulk the thing out late on, but at the same time, they're kind of just delaying the climax that we've already gone through.
Yeah, but it's a minor nitpick in what is otherwise a brilliant quest.
If a DVD was ever released of classic Knightmare quests, I am certain this one would be on it. It is by a country mile the best quest of season 4. Not saying a great deal, I know, but it still has to be said. And there really is some excellent stuff, especially in parts of level 2 and much of level 3. A lot of it contributed to very definitely by the proactivity of Dickon and the team. But yes, the ending is limp. There was a threat of sorts in the final chamber in the shape of the skull haunting, but then it scarpered. So the profound challenge Dickon was left with was, go pick that hat up.
Yeah.
Maybe give Dickon a short journey back to Knightmare Castle to complete with goblins chasing him, which is what they tried to do in season 5, the winning quest there. Or if not a race, maybe a puzzle of some kind to open the castle's back door, or an exit chamber from the dungeon like the old guillotine room, leading to a place where they have to place the crown to complete the adventure.
Yeah. Or move Doreen to after the crown. So Doreen is basically the exit door, but have something happen that gives them low life force. So
same idea, but even better. To change the background from Doreen's chamber, make it the entrance to Knightmare Castle. So you're arriving at a logical place then where it feels right to end it. Plus you're giving Doreen a different chamber to Dorcas's.
Yeah, but also do something that gives them low life force, because that will create some tension, whilst also it'd be better to excuse the easier questions.
Yeah, I suspect the production crew realised that this was looking a bit lame, which is why these successful quests from season 5 onwards would get these sorts of ideas that we're slotting in here.
The epic causeway and stuff.
Yeah, it was often contrived, but at the same time, it was a serviceable, frantic last-minute race to the finishing line to round things off with. But these ideas, they obviously hadn't thought of them at the time they were doing it, and they only realised when watching it that they've left a feeling that something's missing. For its time, and definitely in the context of season 4, this is a quest with a lot of quality for the first time in ages, so we should always be grateful for that. And it opened the door to some of the ideas we're now bouncing around.
More evidence of Series 4 as a transition series, I would say. I don't know if I've made clear at all when I've been talking to you on these podcasts that I love Merlin, and I really like that team congratulation scene. When I was 4, Merlin really was one of the things that attracted me the most to the first series of Knightmare. I absolutely loved the atmosphere of his scenes, the significance of his scenes, that testing point in level 2. You've done well to get this far, but here's where your true test begins. I love what he adds to the quest in that way. I've always enjoyed John Woodnutt's performance as Merlin. I think I engaged with it very much when I was aged 4, 5, 6, and 7, and now that I'm older, the kind of fuddy-duddy dodderiness is the part about it I like the least, but I still have a tremendous amount of affection for the character. And this scene, talking to Dickon's team, congratulating them, let me know when you have another winner, Dungeon Master, but do make it soon. That's my favourite bit.
I did like that bit, yeah.
My perspective on Merlin is a bit more mixed. Whatever you want to say, he is a stereotype. The forgetful old man with a white beard thing is incredibly hackneyed idea. The real reason why they removed him was because Tim Child thought it was too derivative. He wanted to do something more original. In terms of the historical legend of Merlin, the fact that he manages to be omnipresent in culture, going all the way back to at least the 8th century, in 8th century Wales, that every century people seem to get fixated on. One of the things that makes him so compelling is that it's like a stag in the forest that's running away from you. It's never quite in your sight. It's just right on the very furthest edges of your vision. And so you can't quite get a firm grip on what he is. And then you go from that to a really staid, cliched idea like a forgetful old man with a big white beard. You're suddenly turning him into something so absolute and so overly familiar that it becomes the opposite of what you want Merlin to be. Merlin, to me, has to be something mysterious and something very unusual about him. Whereas turning him into a stereotype, this forgetful old man, there's nothing unfamiliar about that at all. It also doesn't really fit with my idea of how Merlin should be. But again, that is just my problem. It doesn't have to be a problem for you.
No time for further celebration, as there's another Dungeoneer on the doorstep.
Ah, there's someone on the threshold. Who knows? Another champion, perhaps. Let's find out. Enter, stranger.
And I think stuff has been cut out of the challenge broadcast here.
There has. The bits that you're missing is Pickle says something on the lines of, well, Master, now that all the excitement's over, it's now on with the excitement. And Treguard's looking still a bit irritated at Merlin's grumpy last rejoinder, then replies, at least until time turns, Pickle.
Oh, excellent.
I am lucky enough to have the version of the episode broadcast on Challenge in 2016 when they reacquired it, and they kept it in. There is a bit of a screen flicker there. That's obviously why they took it out. Also, in the previous episode, there is a missing scene. The scene I've called it here where Motley bums Dickon. He actually stops Dickon on the edge of Dorcas's pit, Motley does, with a kind of bumping him on the bottom with his own hips, and says, whoops, oh, there's a ledge there. I'll just go and have a look if it's all right. Well, we will anyway, talking about Bauble. And then you get Pickle saying, no, you don't. And then you get Treguard saying, well, you seem to have lost the ogre team for the moment anyway. None of that's in the original challenge version. It cuts back in with Pickle saying it seems to be another door.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not on the recordings that we have available to us at the moment. So
good old challenge. They learn slowly, but they learn. So anyway, up steps one of the most morose-looking children ever to grace the doorstep of Dunshelm, although he doesn't manage to affect a kind of smile when he's close to the camera. I actually don't think he does look morose. I just think that poor Jeremy looks absolutely petrified of being in front of the camera.
Enter, stranger. Ah, greetings, challenger. Name yourself.
Jeremy Layton. Eisenwitz, it can't go alone, Master, never it can't.
Well, of course he can't. I think you better call your advisors quickly.
Alexander, Miranda, Anthony.
Welcome. And who guides this Dungeoneer?
Alexander Curtis. Amanda Weaver. Anthony Weaver.
And where do you all come from, Jeremy?
London.
capital.
After the previous team, this lot seem a little on the green side. None of them could be more than 12, in fact. Can't see them lasting very long, can you, chaps? Oh, by the way, this episode is penalised a whole point for Treguard's dreariest line ever when he says capital. Sorry, Treguard. It's around this point that you cease to be my hero. Treguard wastes little time in reminding Jeremy of the basic knapsack rules and blah, 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 and how to handle his helmet. And see, I now get a claim for Duve L'Entendre of the Week as well. And Jeremy is sent on his way.
Are you ready, Jeremy?
Yes.
Good. Turn then, face the dungeon door, and step boldly forward.
Well, hey, engineer with the helmet on your head, but you go for the cup or the crown instead of the sword or the shield, 'cause there's nothing in between. Oh, hey, adventurer, don't be alarmed, but one false move can cause you harm. If you slip out the disc, you'll end up in a ravine at the place of choice.
The choice, Master. It's the place of choice.
Quite so, Pickle, quite so. Now listen, team. These are changing times, and the dungeons you must conquer are changing with them. The quest you choose here will select a path for you to follow, but where it takes you, even I may not guess. So choose now. The quest to redeem the shield of justice or to find the cup that heals.
The team chooses the shield, and Jeremy is guided accordingly with the usual wobbly mounts and dismounts.
Tentative, but quite well done by the Dungeoneer. I mean, the advisor needs to time when he says go a bit more carefully because he did leave it a tad late. Jeremy was already about an inch past the path that he was chosen for him, but he
managed it.
He managed to get onto it safely enough.
Treguard's reaction is the same as ever, just whenever they step on and off.
I think that's everybody's reaction, though, isn't it? Even when it's done well, it still feels very unsteady.
Yeah.
Where am I? Okay, Jeremy, you're in which looks like an entrance to a castle. In front of you there's a big pit and there's a drawbridge as well. Oh.
Oh dear. This creature is a spellbound door. It's been locked with lies and can only be opened with the truth. Its name, by the way, is Dooris, but then the opposition has such a foul sense of humour. As Pickle is so keen to join your team, perhaps he can tell us how to deal with it.
Listen, Alexander. The calling here is simple enough. Budge up. All Jeremy has to do is to call out true and false, false and true, open up, and let us through.
True and false.
True and false.
False and true.
False and true.
Open up.
Open up.
And let us through.
Brilliant.
And let us through. Oh dear. I hear.
Sadly, after all the earlier excitement, we're back to scenery repetition 500. So once again, everything's happening exactly the same way as before.
This is why I hesitate to say that this is my favourite episode of Knightmare. The Dickon part is my favourite episode of Knightmare. It's my favourite passage. But this Jeremy stuff, it's all very familiar.
Yeah, it's gone back to comatose again. We do get another foreshadowing mention of the opposition here. Given the discussion of a singular scene of a singular sense of humour, it's probably still referring to Mogred only and not a full organisation. And I do rather like David Lerner's apparently improvised on the spot decision to join the team by sitting on the benches. Apart from that, there's not really anything going on here we haven't seen a dozen times before.
A female gladiator is called Gladys. True or false?
Of course it's false. I swear I hear Treguard sniggering when this is asked. I don't think Hugo heard that riddle before they actually started recording. And so when he heard it, he just couldn't stop himself.
Well, we know he didn't.
You know what is called Gladys? What is called Gladys to do with a gladiator is the sword.
Yeah, this tends to be pronounced gladius rather than gladius, although in some versions it is pronounced.
And that's where we get gladiator.
Gladius. Is it Latin or Greek?
It's got to be Latin because it's Roman, surely.
I think gladius. I think is Latin. Yeah.
Yeah. So female gladiators are frequently referred to in ancient writings as ludia, which basically means female performance in a luddy, a festival or entertainment, or sometimes as molieres, which generally means women, but not as feminae, which means ladies, which really implies that it's only really lower class women who are lured into the arena.
I think the Moliere the Femini thing is meant to imply that this is women not behaving like ladies.
Yes, I think maybe you're right. Because there is some evidence that highborn women were actually, no.
Yeah, but they weren't behaving like ladies when they were in the arena.
The title gladiatrix was never really used in antiquity. It's a contemporary term that was first used for female gladiators in the 1800s.
There are so many urban myths we have to blame the Victorians for, and this is one of them. So many of them.
The frog is a reptile. True or false? After some conferring, false. They don't know what it is, but they know it's not a reptile.
I mean, it's not a reptile. I do actually know quite a lot of people who think frogs are reptiles. I think it's just because a lot of frogs are green, which is a pretty superficial reason to think it, isn't it?
But there's also Lizard, who is very much a reptile, but because he's an Atlantean and he eats fish and appears to have gills, doesn't he? If you look carefully, he's very much reptilian otherwise.
Do frogs eat fish? They might eat fish eggs, but not fish. I think, again, it's because he's green. Lord Fear tends to use frog references to insult him. And that may confuse some of the audience to thinking that frogs actually literally are reptiles. But they're not. There isn't actually any relationship between Lizard and frogs beyond the insults that Lord Fear throws at him. That's all.
In the book Lord Fear's Domain, the list of Lizard's relatives, which is part of one of the puzzles, is full of reptiles. And that rather annoyed me when I was 11, 12, because on the show, everyone was saying, Lord Fear was saying, Lizard is an amphibian.
It's not even close to a reptile, really, but anyway.
Again, it is rather the green link that you mentioned.
Yeah, it is entirely superficial, the reason why people think that way. Oh, well.
A giraffe has the same number of bones in its neck as a human. True or false?
It is true.
Truth accepted.
I was surprised by this.
It is true, yes.
A giraffe's neck can reach 8 feet in length and 600 pounds in weight, but it only has 7 neck vertebrae, the same number of neck bones as an adult human. However, each of their vertebrae may grow up to 10 inches in length, unlike ours.
Unlike anything of ours. Really.
Well, yeah.
That also explains the remarkable sort of flexibility of a giraffe's neck. They can practically turn their head all the way around very nearly in ways that we couldn't even dream of doing. Because they're long, the space between the joints is quite far apart, and therefore it gives them a lot more maneuverability out of the same number of joints.
So the giraffe's neck has several purposes. One of the more obvious ones is that because they can consume leaves that are high in the tree, they're less likely to be competing for food with other animals. They can also detect far-off predators thanks to their necks, and in fact other animals will look to giraffes to see if there are any predators in the vicinity.
The giraffes have become almost the watchdog of the natural wild. If a giraffe is running away, everybody else starts running up.
It's nature's babysitter. Nature's Diane Udall. Yes. Finally, male giraffes will compete with other males by using their long necks. So they accomplish this by necking or swinging their necks against one another. You can imagine them up on the dual platforms now, can't you? Swinging their necks, trying to knock each other off. Yeah, we strongly advise against trying this at home.
Oh dear, this is terrible. The truth will out. Oh yes, truth will out, and so will you.
We did it! You did it!
All right, Pickle.
Okay.
It's easy
Go
bit.
forward, Jeremy.
This team has shown a promising start. The advisors guide their young friend forward into the next chamber.
Where am I? Right, you're in a room that looks more like a courtyard. And there's a sort of a box with a shield on top. With a shield on top. And there's
Useless. Get over in that corner. Go on and get those cobwebs.
There's a witch.
Useless little wood.
Pardon?
Hello,
There's a
dear.
witch.
Just stay still while we get the floor down, will you?
Oh, do hurry up, woman. I need a clean space for my ritual. Can't you make that thing work any faster?
Faster? Lord, it's a blooming disaster. Should be wanting me to do it myself next.
Oh, root and fen, Master. What do we have here?
A sorceress called Malice and a witch called Goody. One is well named, the other is not.
Okay, Jeremy.
Stay where you are. Are you the dungeoneer called Jeremy?
Yes.
You are expected. In case you're wondering, I read your name in Merlin's scrolls. Merlin and I, we are tolerably well acquainted. I know, of course, of your quest, but there is a minor mission I would wish you to perform for me. It will not interfere with your own ambitions, and you will be very well rewarded. Will you do this for me, Jeremy?
It's another doubtfully necessary appearance from Mistress Goody Badwife here. She isn't really doing anything to contribute to the scene. She never does. I'm impressed how none of the team is even slightly phased by the fact that Malice, who's also here, knows who Jeremy is. I'm also want to say that this is starting to improve things again here, because the subtext when Malice is around is fascinating again. Again, this is a possibility was explored in When Five Tribes Go to War. Malice describes her and Merlin as being tolerably well acquainted here, to the extent that she even has access to his Dungeoneer scrolls. And again, I'd love to see people speculating more about this. It's fun to consider how to interpret this. Here's two options that occur to me. It could mean that she isn't as evil as all that, and so Merlin and other friendly forces are able to do business with her, and may even be willing to trust information to her under certain conditions. Or it could mean that she knows Merlin through her dealings with Mogdred, and has used Mogdred's spiritual connection to Merlin to access the scrolls and find out who Jeremy is.
Or it could be that she's stolen them.
Or she's stolen them, yes, of course. That's the third possibility, but that's less fun. What it does underline is that Malice is a wild card. She could be the death of one Dungeoneer in the first minute and the biggest thorn in Mogdred's flesh the next. It does make her a fascinating and unpredictable big bad. It's, again, such a shame she wasn't kept for season 5. But what the hell is Goody doing in the scene? That's my only complaint, really.
I think it's just background stuff, to be honest. What interests me is if you listen when the team walk into the room, the kids' reaction when they see the shield suggests that they think it's the shield that they're questing for.
Oh, that's been a very short quest then.
Yeah.
Anyone who suggests that Knightmare is getting easier as the years pass, I stand totally in defiance. No, it's never that easy. That would be shorter than a quest in Le Chevalier de Labyrinthe. You're not going to get it that easily.
The team seem to have quickly figured out that they don't really have much of a choice, and they agree. In return, Malice gives Jeremy the eye shield. She explains that it makes possible journeys that would otherwise be impossible.
As Unicron once said to Megatron, "You exaggerate." Don't overstate things, Malice. She shows impressive patience with Jeremy's difficulty putting the shield on his arm, by the way. I can't see Mogdred Audra as being too impressed with that.
Does she quite manage to stay in character there? That's right, put it here and hold it up.
This is definitely Samantha Perkins' finest episode for her acting chops, isn't it?
She tells Jeremy her calling name, Merys, and states that he will be rewarded further on completion of his task. She requests that the Dungeoneer brings her a silver chalice that she needs for her ritual.
Now hurry along. There is little time to lose.
The bells, Master. Time turns and all is ended.
Not ended, Sprite. Merely suspended. There. And on this occasion, we can safely say the suspense is not killing them.
Do they get suspended, Master?
After a fashion, Pickle. After a fashion. You see, what happens is that when they're absolutely certain they're not going to miss anything, they just sort of drift off. There. See?
I think that's brilliant timing there. There's little time to lose. Dong!
Oh, as little as that?
Now, I've got a possible answer to your question here, Martin H.
I've got the answer to it as well. But you go ahead.
What is the question?
Yeah, so the question is, Malice throws something to the floor as she walks off, or she drops something, or something falls, or something.
No, she doesn't.
I've written, can you be referring to advisor drops pencil?
Ah.
Correct. That's what it is. The gesture she's doing coincides with the sound, so it looks like she might be throwing something. But all she's actually doing is pointing to the door and saying, "Get a move on." What we hear is a pencil one of the advisors has dropped on the floor, which means it's actually a blooper.
Yes, because that could have been cut out.
It could have been muted, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
But the credits play over portraits of Dickon, Dominic, Tim, and Praveen above the crown that they're quested for. I'm glad those portraits are there on the credits, because judging by the sign-off, when they're free to say anything they like, it appears Tragon and Pickle have actually forgotten that we've had a winner in this episode, which seems a little bit tight, doesn't it?
I like the way at the beginning of the next episode, Traegard says, "Here we are, still celebrating the victory of Dickon and his friends over the dungeon," because you can guarantee we still are as well at home.
Yeah, oh, definitely. That was it's a happy moment. It's just they seem to have forgotten to carry on celebrating at the end of the actual episode it happens in. That's all. It feels wrong. Anyway, chaps, what do we think of what has to go down as one of the classic episodes? At least the first half of it.
Absolutely fantastic for the first half, and the second half, although it kind of moves back into familiarity, look too much, but
it does its moments. You know, it's not terrible.
The team are young, but they seem okay at the moment.
They may be a bit slow manoeuvring, and I don't expect much from them. They're inoffensive. Everything with Malice in it in this episode is superb. Even that last scene with her, it still gives you a lot of things to think about and a lot of things to speculate on. It's a really good episode, with an exciting late level 3 in particular, brought down only slightly by the anticlimactic denouement. Yes, it's an obviously inferior team taking over in the second half, but they haven't done any harm. There are still, I would say, stronger episodes both in earlier and later seasons, but this is the best you're going to get out of season 4, and it's well above just about anything else in season 4, in fairness to it. Massive kudos to Samantha Perkins for her performances here. She's superb all the way through. Just sadly, it's largely, not exclusively, but largely downhill from here for season 4. You know, it's still got a few moments left worth watching, but by and large, it never gets anywhere near the heights of this one again.
We haven't got much of season 4 left now, have we?
No, not much. It's only about 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah.
When I was first invited to be on this podcast, specifically to talk about Series 4, because it was coming up, I immediately thought, right, I could be on episode 1, give some general thoughts about the series, which I did, and I would love to do episode 13 and talk about Dickon winning. I did enjoy doing episode 11 as well, though I wasn't planning to
So,
first.
Can I just interfere? You didn't want to do the one with Simon, sidestep to your left.
No, this was the other one I immediately thought of. And as you say, yeah, it's inoffensive stuff with Jeremy. It's quite repetitive, but there's nothing wrong with it.
Cool.
I will commit and say this is my favourite ever episode of Knightmare, and I'll commit to a score 10 out of 10.
Excellent.
Hey, that's an endorsement, certainly. I won't go that far. There's episodes in season 2 that I prefer, probably 1 or 2 in season 3 as well. I'm not a big fan of the later years, despite Lord Fear, but there's still a couple of the later stages, seasons 7 and 8, that I think I prefer. But this is still in the conversation for me as one of the best.
Yeah.
It's by a country mile the best that season 4 has to offer. 8.
I must say I've enjoyed this one the most. It really has been kind of 3-way appreciation of the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe with slightly different thoughts and angles at times, but it's really got to the core of what's made Knightmare very special for all of us.
Yeah.
I must admit, I've really enjoyed this one because I've actually had an episode where I can really infuse over it and really say, this is good stuff. I don't like having to say this episode is crap, but I have to be honest, and an awful lot of the stuff in season 4 to me comes across as crap. This is not. This is really good, and I do enjoy being able to say that. I do enjoy being able to speculate over what's going on between Mogdred and Malice. I do enjoy really appreciating clever dungeoneering and smart, sharp advising by the team. So it's more fun for me as well, I promise you. It's nice to be able to say I love Knightmare and actually really sound like it for once.
So we've enjoyed this one, listeners of Illusion, and I hope you have too, more than usual.
And we really do hope you've enjoyed this podcast. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, then please give us a rating and review on your platform of choice. It really does help us to grow our audience by reaching others who might be interested.
You can follow us on Twitter. We're at Knightmare Pod, and our Mastodon, that's Mastodon, is topspicy.social/@NightmarePod.
If you want to support the podcast, it's Knightmare Pod on Patreon.
Speaking of Patreon, here to shout out to Keepers of the Book of Quests, David N. Rabbit, Paul McIntosh, Peter Pulsford and Scott Evans.
Advisors, Benjamin Bloom, Dave Thompson, Kim Harder, which is still a hysterically silly surname, Peter Sidorn, Paul Craddy, Lord Entropy, where the O is a 0, please note, and Steve Whelan.
And let's not forget Dungeoneers Peter Courage and Adam Battersby.
Support us on Patreon at Dungeoneer level or above to get your name mentioned on the podcast, high-level perks, also receive merchandise, have access to exclusive episodes, and if you pledge as a Keeper of the Book of Quests, we'll even offer you the chance to be a guest on the podcast.
Our website is nightmarepod.co.uk.
If you're looking for Temporal Discussion merchandise, and let's face it, why wouldn't you be, including t-shirts, stickers and other products, it's nightmarepod.redbubble.com.
You can email us at podcast@nightmarepod.co.uk.
And just keep telling yourself,
it's only a podcast,
isn't it?